So self-driving trucks might be a lot closer than you think. And I'll tell you, once they're perfected, they will have a profound effect on the 3.6 million professional truck drivers, the 7.6 million people who are employed in the trucking industry, and the 8% that whole industry contributes to the United States yearly GDP. And even if this upcoming mass exodus doesn't affect you or someone you know directly, the knock-on effects absolutely will. And although change isn't necessarily good or bad, it's just inherently what it is, there's always some people who seem to benefit more than others. So in this video, I want to simply understand what it will mean when all of these millions of Americans lose their job, and then think about ways that we can possibly prepare for these changes. So, oddly enough, the short term for truck drivers and trucking companies actually looks really bright, and I would argue that maybe even the medium term, which was not what I was expecting when I started researching. The fact is, there's currently a shortage of truck drivers in the United States. Hours, wages, and benefits, they're all going up right now. So as long as you keep in mind that it's in the trucking company's best interest to automate your job eventually, then it is a place where you can earn a living right now. However, and you probably know what I'm getting into, some of the pressure that's driving up these wages is actually coming from the data collection needs from the big tech companies like Google and Uber and Tesla, who ironically are using this data to perfect the systems that are then going to be used to replace those jobs. A sad fact about modern reality is that companies and governments are collecting massive and obscene amounts of data from us, and often with little or no compensation. There's very little that people are doing to fight back and protect their privacy, and there's it's like a weird mismatch with leverage that we're going to talk about later. It's not that I blame someone, it's that it's not exactly clear how to collectively get everyone together, and there's just very little that people are collectively doing to fight back. But honestly, it just doesn't seem fair that you can pay a truck driver minimum wage, then have him sign a disclosure to give up his data, and pay him the same amount, when eventually that data is going to train a self-driving truck which learned from his actions to make money for somebody else. And make no mistake about it, that's what's happening to the truck drivers that are on the road today. So once peak demand levels off in the next few years, the next step is going to be moving these people, these truck drivers, into more of like a safety measure role. As the trucks will generally drive completely on their own, the new value of the human in the cab is actually to take over in edge cases. Whoa! Whoa! And that will also tell the system the most important parts of the data that they need, which are those edge cases. Because I also think that there's just a huge risk in having something like a semi-truck barreling down the freeway, moving through our cities, I feel like that safety measure level, and also the fighting back of the unions, it's gonna last for a long time. I do think there will be autonomous trucks with humans sitting there doing nothing for many years to come. I kind of see it as we get this peak demand now for data collection, then I see logistics systems kind of being more refined, and the whole world, even though they need more goods, getting more automated slowly. So I'll see kind of a slow decline, but then somewhere in the maybe 8 to 10 year range is my guess, then I see it really kind of drop off. When everybody says, look, these drivers have been sitting in cabs for years, they haven't done anything, these trucks are super safe, we just legislate the need to actually have a human in their way, and then boom, that's when it really happens all at once, right at the end. And if we haven't set up those truck drivers for something, some kind of benefit at that point, they're done. The weird thing is, if I try to project myself into what the world might look like at 10 years with truck drivers getting fired in mass, I think we're gonna look back on today and say, how could we have not paid them more for this data that is making a company like Google in the future maybe billions, maybe even trillions of dollars for the major companies that have all of the control over the logistical system? And we're gonna say we had millions of people lose their job, and then we had a handful of people with hundreds of billions, maybe even $1 trillion in value. Why didn't we do more to basically get these people invested in their own future and the thing that they're building without even knowing it? Dude, it's just it irks me, because taking data from a truck driver, using that to train a system, and then replacing them, and for the most part them thinking that they're just getting paid as truck drivers, not realizing that they're generating extremely valuable data, far and above beyond more valuable than the actual cargo that they're delivering. It's like akin to boiling a frog. It's so insidious, and like you kind of want to, like I feel like shaking a truck driver and being like, hey man, listen, do you realize like you're valuable, like way more valuable than you know. I know you can't like fight for your rights just as an individual, but like as a group, you guys have a ton of leverage, and that's what I want to kind of get into in this video. But also, like, I totally get it. It's unreasonable to go to a truck driver and expect them to know anything about what data is collected from their truck, what systems it goes into, how it's being trained, and then even if he did and said, listen, I know how valuable this is and I deserve a cut, they'll just replace him, right? So we have to think a little bit deeper about this problem in a systems way and try to think about steps that we can do to kind of get to this better future. Okay, so my caveat is I've never worked in transport. I'm not a logistics expert. Feel free to disregard this plan I have to save the trucking industry because it's just a talking point. I just want to throw out there some steps and see if maybe I can get a conversation started. I'm happy to learn from you guys in the comments, but here is 5 steps that I came up with when I was just trying to brainstorm how we could get to a world where we don't throw all of these truck drivers under the bus and they end up with good long careers, 20, 30-year careers, build a family, have a middle-class lifestyle, not be scared to death that robots are going to take their jobs and put them out on the street. Here's what I came up with. Okay, so the fact is right now, 7.6 million people in the United States work in the trucking industry and they just don't care. They don't know, they don't care, I don't expect them to. That's my baseline. I need them to somehow get to a place where they have Google and Tesla and Facebook in the corner, right? They have the data, they have the community, they have the union, and those big tech companies are like, fine, we will pay top dollar, we will set up benefits, but we need that data to keep our systems good, and then that, maybe trillions of dollars flow back through to the humans who are actually doing the work right now. So step 1, let's identify what's actually valuable about what truck drivers are doing. For the first step, I see it as getting a message out to the trucking companies. Now, I'm not saying that would be easy, but in some sense, if you actually got the ear of somebody who was the CEO of a trucking company and you said, hey, did you know there's a ton of value that would cost you almost nothing to add to your bottom line? Actually, you're already doing what you think is the money-making thing, but there's a whole nother way that you can just attach sensors to different parts of your company, collect data, and someone will pay you for that data. I think the ears would perk up. And even though there is a lot of trucking companies, I could see that message being the place to start. Once you kind of perk their ear, it would be important to sort of say that like there's all these little parts of your company that you don't know are incredibly valuable. And that's the data that Google really can't get to easily. Your scheduling, your calendars, the kind of cargo that you're moving, your specific geographic area and like what, patterns there are. All that stuff, like it's probably not captured, might not even in some sense be known by the CEO, but collectively throughout all of the employees and all of the people who work, they have it. And that is important. If you can quantify it, capture it, package it, all of a sudden you keep it behind a wall and Google will pay you for that. Because just being honest, some data isn't as valuable. And big tech definitely needs millions of miles of highway driving and what lane you're in and when you slow down and when truck drivers take breaks and stuff like that. But in some sense, they can get that pretty easily. They could just pay a trucking company, outfit it, and just kind of run those, or just even drive like those Google mapping cars down the freeway. And like they're going to get that data either way. So I don't think trucking companies need to like focus in on that. But what truck they use for what type of good at what time, like the load in, the load out times, there's a whole bunch of scheduling and unique driver skill data. Especially, some people, they drive a route in a city and they've been doing it for a company for a long time and they've built up a relationship with the vendor and they know how to just like 2 a.m. they go in the city and they put a cone out here or there. It sounds weird, but that kind of stuff, like even though it's small and you might think nothing of it in real life, a system doesn't know it, and until it sees it and learns from it, it can't do that, and it's basically impossible for some autonomous truck to make those same maneuvers because they're so unique, they're so special. So yeah, last mile delivery, unique drivers, package that together, don't let them have it for free. Now you have a little bit of negotiating power, which brings me to the next step. Step 2, unionize. Okay, and I say unionize like as a title, but I generally mean what you do need to do is get all of the people together under some kind of umbrella. There needs to be some kind of, I would say, corporate structure that says, hey, all of you are part of this, your data goes into this pool, and we fight for you. And along with that needs to be some basic understanding of who these people actually are, what the company is, how is equity going to be split between the trucking companies or the employees. If it comes to the grassroots level, even better. It doesn't need to be like a huge group. We don't need need like a big union meeting all of the time. I think that you just, instead of signing a disclosure saying that like I work for you and you get all the data from these trucks, there's sort of a disclosure that says, hey, this data is going to this entity, and this entity is going to help all the trucking companies and all the truck drivers benefit from this data because it is valuable and we know it's valuable. That's it, just a small change. But this does have to be like a very tech savvy group who understands how to go into the systems, collect the data, sort of shield the data, clean the data, and present it in a way where the big tech companies need it. And they have to be working with pretty much hardcore lawyers, the way I imagine it, that are going to say like, no, you can't get to this. And every time Google tries to like get a company to get the leverage, they're like, no, come over here and we'll keep you in our system. You know, like there has to be a way, because big tech will always just be like, well, why don't we just like, you know, they'll collect tons of data. And in the long run, it's not exactly hopeless, but it would be way better for them early on to just negotiate something where some of that money will continually flow down instead of turning it into kind of an all-out war. Because if it goes that way, then obviously tech's just going to win. And if they don't even mount a fight, then tech's just going to take the data for free. So those are really our only three choices. Because one of the best things that the transportation industry has going for it in the long run is that if they group together like that, Google and big tech is not incentivized to buy a huge trucking company. It's incredibly expensive, and all of the other aspects, the non-data collection aspects of the company, are going to be seen as a liability. They're not going to be part of the core competency. You never see tech companies just buy that much, and it would be a drag. It's not in their best interest. They're going to find a way to just collect the data and stay out of the trucking industry if possible. Okay, so if we stop at step 2, this video did like nothing, because all I'm going to do is make some old transport legacy companies a whole bunch of extra money, and it's still not going to go down to the actual truck drivers. Because I would hate it if all we do is make those old trucking company guys super rich, and then autopilot takes out millions of jobs, and they're like, well, we made money at least, and not giving it to the tech companies. Like, they're just as bad. Like, it's got to go to the truck driver. So for step 3, we have to figure out a way to distribute the value down the chain to the truck driver. And this is by far the step that I struggled with the most and feel like I have the least clear answer for you, so just bear with me. Because trying to come up with anything that seems feasible was just hard, because there's so much incentive for the trucking company to just essentially steal this extra money. On the crazy end of the spectrum, there's some interesting solutions with like NFTs and fractional shares, but I don't think any of that could work today, and this is a problem that we need to solve today. So I threw all that stuff out, and at this step, I think it would have to just be like a good old get the word out to the actual truck drivers, make sure that the unions are very aware of this, and that you can just kind of mount a little bit of a pushback from the actual truck drivers to the trucking companies. Say, I see you're signing these deals, I see you've started taking this data, and as a group, we're either not going to show up or you're going to share it with us. I could see that with the promise of all this money, a smart trucking company would say, whoa, let's just realize that we have a huge amount of extra income if we do this right. Let's provide benefits. Let's translate this into healthcare and other retirement vehicles. Let's try to buy out our competitors, or try to group together. So the most forward thinking of the transportation CEOs hopefully could just be like, hey, I've got insane benefits if you work for my trucking company, not that guy. And then they're like, hey, it's fine because I have so much money coming in. If I boost up the quality and I, invest a little bit into the systems for the data collection, and I keep these people long term with 401ks and retirement vehicles, then I can, basically keep getting more and more of this huge value that's going to start trickling in from big tech. Also, it's not just like you get the data one time and you're done. I don't see this as a one-time payout. So hopefully the unions and the companies, they could negotiate somewhat of a long-term structure for a quality data source that's going to be continually updated with how the logistics systems around the entire US constantly change. So if there's a constant need for new data, then there's constantly money coming in from it, then hopefully they can pay for a constant system, and that means long-term benefits for people. So if these autonomous systems replace humans for a long-term need of data collection, at least there should be some long-term jobs and some long-term benefits that could be negotiated upfront. In the comment sections, if you pick that one apart or have better ideas, I don't blame you. To be honest, this whole thing is kind of like, I doubt it will happen. I'm just trying my best to figure out like 1 or 2 paths through so that all these truck drivers actually could form something in the long run. I know it would take a lot of work, and in some sense it's very unlikely, but if nobody is even thinking about it, then we're just doomed from the start. So that's why we're doing this. Anyways, let's go to step 4. Let's say we solve that and we actually have a reasonably good united front between the truck drivers and the trucking unions and the trucking companies, and they've collected the data. Now we need to talk about quality. So if we get to this ideal situation, my guess would be that not only would a big tech company give a long-term benefits package to the companies for long-term access to the data, but they'd also need to just dump right up front all sorts of money into putting sensors all over the trucks, the warehouses, the people, updating the back-end systems, because that's a huge problem to solve, and that in itself would create a bunch of jobs and help the trucking companies sort of start this transition into understanding what it is in the future that they're going to be doing when they're not just hiring employees to drive trucks. And the good news is that the need to always provide higher quality, better resolution, more unique data sets will not go away. And the way I would imagine, there'd probably be a lot of consolidation, because I think a few trucking companies would quickly invest in that, and they would see that sort of chicken or egg problem solved quicker than another company, and they would be in a great position to say, hey, I already know how to outfit the trucks, I already know the kind of data that Google needs from my system, but what I don't have is enough trucks and enough people doing different scheduling. So at that point, it seems like there would be a lot of consolidation in the trucking industry. It's harder to kind of just do it from the ground up, and I think that big companies will use their leverage to buy out others. So I do see, unfortunately, consolidation, which usually isn't good for an industry, but when systems do talk cleanly with each other, that data can make for safer autonomous trucks in the future. So kind of a mixed bag there, in my opinion. And speaking of mixed bag, that brings us to our sponsor. We don't have one yet. But guess what? Just in the last 3 videos, we went from 80 subscribers to 350. So thank you. In just the last 2 weeks, I'm like beyond excited, and I got so many more ideas for videos, so I'm gonna be pushing them out basically as fast as I can get them like quality edited and quality thought through, because if that suffers, then the whole channel will suffer. So I just wanna say thank you. I have a lot of faith that I'm building content that people are actually enjoying, because I saw all the comments. I got over 100 on the last video, so we're gonna stay the course, and yeah, just thank you guys. And now back to the video. Alright, and now step 5. The very last step, it would be to figure out how to maintain that value chain, transition over a lot of the truck drivers into different jobs where they're monitoring the data, they're understanding what's actually valuable, and they keep those positions for a long time. So my goal in this thought scenario was, if somebody started today in the trucking industry, what would their jobs look like if they made it 30 years, right? If they stayed employed by their company and they moved from truck driving into just monitoring the truck as it drives itself. So they would be thinking about, oh, what actually matters to the data collection company, and how can I help provide that to my boss, and then their boss, and then all the way up. And the good news is that some percentage of this workforce, of these 7.6 million people, are absolutely still going to have a job in 30 years. I don't know if it's 5% or 25%, could be anywhere in that range, but I kind of think that there is like a good 1 in 5 chance, or like 1 in 6 chance that you could survive if you want to take it upon yourself to continually be on top of this, to talk to your boss and say, hey, what's our data collection process? Or like, how are you trying to capitalize this? Is there ways I can help when I'm not in the truck? Or is there things I can learn in the free time? Like, I feel like there is a ton of opportunity, even for somebody who knows nothing about it today. Because one thing that is always going to be a fact of life is that the transportation and logistics systems around the world are constantly in flux. People want different goods, they have different needs, different types of things. I mean, think about shipping containers and oil, and I think about Amazon packages. I think about in the future when we do drone deliveries, and I think about how airports, they all have to connect. They always have to connect, and they're always changing, and there's always sort of asynchronous problems, and self-driving cars and trucks will be an important part of that, but they will have to be updated on the rest of the world constantly. So, you know, I don't think you can just plug and play any kind of system in to collect that data from a high level and just let it be, and just fire everybody and collect all of that value. There will be people who have to go in there and connect systems and update systems, and when new machine learning programs make decisions about where drones go, then other people will have to make decisions about where the autonomous trucks go, and they'll have to change the data sources to even if the computers are making those decisions. So that's the kind of place where you need to think about being in the long run. Neural networks and machine learning systems can be amazing at making a decision when they're fed the right kind of data. Quality control is essentially what you need to think of in 5 or 10 years if you want to stay in the trucking industry. Alright, that's it. I don't know if I helped anything, but autonomous trucks are coming, and that's just kind of how I see the next 5 or 10 years playing out. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy our other 2 YouTube channels. We have a Be Curious podcast and a Be Curious reaction channel. We have awesome conversations over there too, so I'd love to see you in the comment sections. Like, subscribe, boop things, all that, button pressing stuff. And as promised from the last comment section, I asked you guys to give me a text to generate into an image, and I picked this one from subscriber Jen Kramer. Asked for Las Vegas magician to conjure up avocados, blackberries, and beans as a gift for her boyfriend. And today, we're gonna take it a step further. Guess what? I brought the commenter with me.
Hello! Look at that, wow. Not just text to image generation, but actually making me appear in real life.
This is the commenter.
Hey,
she is Jen Kramer, magician here in Las Vegas. Check out her show if you ever come through. She's got an amazing magic show.
Thank you.
She's a wonderful person, and I love her.
Oh,
love her to the end of the earth or whatever. Yeah.
And guys, for context, the reason that I wanted to make avocados, blackberries, and beans appear are that those are Dylan's favorite foods.
She knows all my favorite things.
I wanted to magically conjure those up. Now I'll let you guys get back to self-driving trucks.
Okay.
Abracadabra.
Dang, man. See, it's crazy dating a magician. My life is crazy.